So, you've got a whole host of plastic needs painted, more figures than time allows. Well, in this video, I'm going to paint up a whole swathe of figures in a simple, easy to follow way that anyone can do. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Now, the methods and techniques in this video are going to be super transferable to any game setting or genre. So whether that's painting a whole host of historical stuff, legions of fantasy things, or if you're more sci-fi adjacent, regardless of what I'm painting, it will apply to anything. Now, for a little while, hiding in a box, I had a whole load of Barons War, Men at Arms and Peasants waiting to be built or partly built and painted. And thank you to Stu, one of my patrons. Big shout out to Stu. He kindly donated a whole load of these as well because he didn't want them anymore. He'd move on to other stuff. So he was like, do you want these, Peach? And I was like, yes, that's very kind of you, Stu. I love you. Thank you. With me doing my 5 league stuff and then build up to maybe an Oathmark battle, I thought, you know what? I might as well get these painted. But medieval foot sergeants and like men at arms and stuff like that have loads of colours on them and they're all really pretty. And then you got all the knights and stuff like that and they're all really pretty. Now, I've done a fair few knights and I've spent my time on them. But the foot troops, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work. And that's why I've put them off. However, it occurred to me, unlike my fantasy stuff where all my troopers are wearing the same colours and heraldry of their liege lord, commoners in historical settings probably wouldn't have that. In fact, they're so poor, they'll be lucky to scrape some kind of colour onto their cloth and garb. And that's kind of where my head's at. Like, I'm going to paint all of my stuff in very neutral drab colours, but put all my effort into something like the shield design or whatever. So that's kind of the purpose really of this video, is to use a minimal palette of colours, mix it up a little bit. So if I'm using green, like on some models that I have green sleeves, on others green tunics, on others green trousers, and then put all my effort into the shield design. And that's also where I'm going to be a little bit sneaky as well, because I had this plan that if I use a very minimal palette of colours that is very like neutral and drab, I can use those same troopers for different factions. I just swap out the shield. So I'm not actually going to glue my shields on. Obviously, you probably will because you're doing your own stuff. But I'm going to do it so I can swap out the shield. So I can probably use them for Barons War. I can probably use them for like my Oathmark game. Or as random guards or bandits for my 5 league stuff. So just by not gluing the shields on and then swapping it around will give me more options for many other game systems and forces and whatever. So yeah, that's the plan. Minimal colours, minimal effort. Put the effort in the shield. I like that. What I'm also going to do in this video is use the new Goblin Hobbies stamping kit. Now that's a really fun little kit because if you're not quite comfortable or confident enough to do like freehanding, or you just want some kind of sigil, something simple like an emblem to go on a shield, like a flat colour, then the stamping kit's really, really good. So I'll show you at the end of like the painting what I did for that, for this kind of weird looking deer head or stag head, because kind of like the idea of having like some green guys or like green heraldic looking dudes rocking up, because I've got my blue guys for my Whitewood mercenaries, I've got the yellow for the black veil, the red for some of the baddie stuff, so throwing in some green for like some hedge knights, or I don't know, some random realm or whatever. I've not really decided, just paint them in green because they look cool. But yeah, swap it out however I want to, which is great. I've waffled on enough. What I'm going to do now is just get painting. Let's do some painting. So the first part is to get the models undercoated. So there's a lot of leather and wooden details on these models. So I'm going to spray them all brown using Hyrax Brown from Colourforge, and then give a little dust over with some trench brown, very much like how I would do my wooden details on like the furniture stuff I've done in previous videos. So it just gives it a nice sort of pre-highlight. It's a zenithal spray if you like. So what that's going to do is really help me along the way when it comes to painting all the other details. So when it comes to dry brushing, it's going to be a lot easier. And then I've got all my leathers and wooden stuff kind of pretty much sorted. Then after that, I'm going to get myself like a beige or a bone colour. So here I'm using skeleton bone, and I'm just going to dry brush this over. Now, at first this might seem quite weird because it's like you've got quite dark browns here, and then you almost move into a really, really bright sort of bone tone. So that's kind of the point really, is this is going to help the next steps when I start applying speed paints and stuff like that. This light tone is really going to help with the highlights on that. So very much like the slap chop method that many of you might be aware of. So I'm just going to go around and start dry brushing this on all of the figures I've got. For the most part, I'm just going to do one pass, but you could always do a second coat over if you need to, if there's some areas that just need a little bit more subtle dry brushing here and there. But like I said, this is that first key highlight or dry brush that's going to really help the next colours along. Now here I do have myself a little bit of a conveyor belt method, so I am working my way through one at a time. Stops me from like getting confused as to where I am. This will come apparent later on in later stages. But yeah, there we are. They've all been sprayed, dusted with a zenithal, and now had a dry brush of bone all over. So I'm going to move on to the next steps now, which is to start adding some colour. Now I did do a test model as well, so this is my test model. This was just to see if it all worked. Happy enough with it. So the next step is to start applying some colour. So I'm going to get myself a speed paint called Abolition Green. I'm just going to thin that down with the speed paint medium. I've got a little metal bowl here. I'm just going to mix it all together because I don't want it too strong straight from the pot. I want it thinned down a little bit. And the key really here is to start applying that to different sections on the model. Now I'm going to be a little bit, I say neater. If I do make mistakes, I can always tidy it with some brown or whatever if it all goes horribly wrong. But the general rule here is now to start picking out just the colors I want green. So on some models like here, I'm going to do the tunic green, just work my way around picking that out. Again, you might want to pull in some places. Depending on how much you thin it down, you might want to do a second coat, but for the most part, one coat should be more than enough. Yes, it's a brown undercoat. You're probably thinking speed paints aren't going to work on a brown undercoat, but with that kind of dirtiness and that drabness, and of course having that really light bone dry brush, that's going to really help the colour pop out a little bit more. Again, we're going for drab, old, dirty kind of clothes. Here, picking out a sleeve on another guy, and he's got a hood as well. So again, I'll scatter this with different colours across the different models. I've got about 18, 20 here at the moment. There's a whole bunch more that I didn't fit on screen that I still need to finish off. But yeah, work my way around, picking out like tunics on some, trousers on another, sleeves on some, hoods. More if you want to, you can have sleeves and trousers done in green on some of them. It's just about breaking up, making them feel a little bit more ad hoc, and that's the key really. I think it's that ad hoc look, so they're not all uniformed. You can have them uniformed, that's up to you. Next after that, using the same method that I did with the green, so thinning it down very similar, just adding a couple of bits of that medium to it. I'm going to get some murder scene. So this is more of a burgundy colour, so not bright red, so it's going to look really dirty, almost brown in some places as well, but I really like the tone of it. Again, not too in your face, so if I have like guys with blue shields, this burgundy and green is not going to stand out too much against that. It will just be more of a subtle colour in the background. They are a bit shiny, I will point that out. I think that might have been because I didn't mix the medium up properly or whatever, but I will be adding a wash later on that will matte that all down, so I'm not too concerned by the fact there's a bit of a shine on those speed paints. Normally they dry quite matte. I think that was more of a user error. I didn't shake up enough. My bad, Peach. But yeah, working my way around, again, following that little method I've got, almost like a conveyor belt, just work from the back and then slowly work forwards. There is an element sometimes of double checking just to make sure I have not missed anything. That is always something to bear in mind, especially if you go and get a cup of tea. Do check where you are. Then with those colours, I decided I felt it needed some grey. On the test model, there was no other colours on there or no room for it. So grey is great as well because it's a monochromatic colour, so it works with a lot of other colours. That would be the same with like whites and blacks. Thinned it down, very much like to a speed paint consistency, if you like. Again, this might be a little bit trial and error. Just put a little bit on the model to test first and then see how you get. Again, multiple thin coats isn't bad. A thicker coat, you won't get those highlights pushing through. So that's kind of why I was very mindful just to double check that I was happy with the consistency. Again, from a numbers point of view, I think it was like 2 paintbrushes of water to 1 paintbrush of paint. But yeah, depends on how big your paintbrush is and how much water you soak up on that brush. But yeah, just going around picking out sleeves, trousers, tunics on some, again just to add to that variety. Then on a bunch they got these leather hauberks, so I really like this padded leather hauberk that a lot of the this era medieval troops wore. So I'm just going to get some hardened leather. I'm just going to paint that over those. You could use this on some belts and leathers on other guys as well, but it's the same colour I think I used when I did Peach the Unremarkable, his first rendition of that. So lots of similar colours here used for him as I'm using on these as well. So maybe this could be his Legion of Troops he eventually accrues in the story. That's not going to happen. He's going to die horribly. But yes, just work your way around and have fun applying this. Like I said, you could use this on other colours if you wanted to as well. But yeah, I just want to go around, check, make sure all the colours that I've used so far are on the models and there's nothing I've missed, because sometimes you might miss a hood or you might miss some trousers. So I just want to do that. That is an important part sometimes of army painting. Just double check. Then it's a matter of applying the metal colours. So some models, they have less. They just have a helmet. On others, they might have a bit more mail. So I've got a guy with mail sleeves here as well as a helmet. And then he's got like a little bit of a skirt at the front. If you're doing foot knights as well, if you want to, keep your foot knights the same colour, certainly from a fantasy setting, they'll have a bit more. Then there's obviously the weapons, like the billman here. But yeah, just work your way around. Now with the crossbows, they have a few bits of metal on them as well. So I just went around, picked out a little bit here and there. But it was really just going methodically through my troopers, starting from the top, doing the helmet, working my way down to any of the details that might be metallic, all the way to maybe the buckles on their belts and stuff like that. But yeah, just work your way around, have some fun, stick some metals on. Next up is to pick out the skin. Obviously, this will vary depending on what kind of troops you're doing and where they're from. But here, I'm just going to use Paratrooper Tan and then just base coat. Usually with Paratrooper Tan, I really like this colour. It only needs one coat, even when it's slightly thinned down. It seems to have a lot of pigment in it, and I'm very pleased with that. So yeah, I'm just going to go around and pick out. Now, on some, I will pick out the hands, but I was thinking to myself, actually, just to speed things along even more, I could just leave those brown and then maybe add like a black later, or thin down black to do them as gloves. So I will not do that on all of them. I'll just pick out faces for a lot of them, and then I can decide later on if I want them with gloves. Certainly like these guys, like the men-at-arms, I reckon they'll have gloves. Certainly when I did my reenacting, you need gloves because it gets cold and also a little bit of protection on your hands. But yeah, work your way around, picking out the faces. Some a little bit easier than others. Certainly things like the Norman Spangenhelm helmet with that little nose guard, that's going to be a little bit more tricky. But yeah, most of them quite open-faced. Some knights, especially if you go for like the full bucket helm, you don't even need to worry about the faces. But yeah, just work your way around, have some fun. Maybe a second coat if you need it, but for the most, I don't think you will because, well, that, like I say, Paratrooper Tan is pretty cool. Then I'm going to pull out my secret weapon, which I always do, is shade the whole model. So yeah, it dries quite matte. It has like a nice sort of like blendiness to it as well. So as it starts to like pool, certainly down in the recesses, it will give a bit of a blend. Obviously, you have to be mindful as well. Wash, as I call it, soak off any excess if you need to. Once that's dry, I'm just going to go around and do a little bit of tidying up, mostly on the face, because like I say, a little bit of love on the face just to help it pop out. But all I'm really doing here is just using that same base coat that I applied. You could add a highlight if you wanted to, of like a lighter tone, but really I'm just going to pick out the face with the colour I initially base coat with, because the shade will darken it down. That's doing a lot of the hard work. If you have picked out the hands, obviously don't forget to pick out the fingers. And then in some places, if you want a little bit more bling to your helmet, certainly like on the Spangenhelm here, and with obviously their Aventail at the back, you might want to pick out a little bit of extra silver there just as a highlight, but you don't have to. And then for the gloves, I'm just going to get some Grim Black and I'm going to paint that over the hands that are brown. So it gives it like a dark leathery brown. I'm also going to use this for the eyes. So, yeah, if you've got beards or moustaches, or you just need to emphasize things like the crossbow bolts, the fletchings on those belts as well, like on this guy with the hauberk, and there's a lot of brown there. So actually just picking out the belt with like this Grim Black is just going to make it really, really dark brown, which work quite nicely as well. But yeah, work your way around, find anything you feel that needs it. Maybe like some sections like between like boots and trousers need a little bit more of a border. You could use it there as well. And then I'm going to get some mid-battle dress and I'm just going to softly dry brush mostly around the base of the model. So like the lower part of their skirts or tabards or like hauberks, and then around the feet and stuff like that. Just to look dirty and muddy. Now the shields, I've got a whole load of shields here. I'm going to go with some green ones to start off with, time with the colour scheme I've done. I'm going to sponge on some Guardian green. So I'm using the Army Painter Sponge tool. It's quite handy really. I've pulled some bits out because I was doing like some neater stuff on another model earlier. But yes, I'm just going to go around just stabbing on some Guardian green. Some of these are shields I've done different decals on in the past. I've just like decided to spray over. You might see some designs show through, but once I've actually got the actual design on, you won't notice it that much at all. But green skin is my highlight here, just a little bit more subtle in places. As promised, I'm going to cover the stamping kit from Goblin Hobbies. So the first thing you want to do is pick a design, splodge on a little bit of enamel paint, then you get a scraper tool, and all you need to do is just scrape away. So obviously you've got the design then, and then you have a stamp, and then you literally stamp it, and as you can see here, I'll just move that extra bit out of the way. You have the stamp. You have a limited amount of time to get on the model. So usually like 4 to 5 seconds. So once you've stamped, it's quick work, and then trying to be accurate. That's the tricky part. As you can see, I'm using like the little bit in the middle as an eyeglass just to help with a little bit of accuracy. But in some places I will kind of not be super accurate and get it a little bit wrong. But yeah, just work my way around. And if I'm making mistakes or it's been a bit splodged with some enamel, I can just get some like Guardian green and then just tidy back up. Obviously I've sponged some of this so I can go back over and re-sponge. Now in some places, some of the stag face didn't fully form when I was doing the stamping, so I'm just going to get some white and then just tidy that up and just add it in. That was more because I wasn't putting the right kind of pressure on really. And then I'm just going to get some mid-battle dress like I used earlier for the dry brush, thin that down and apply it over just to make it look a little bit stained and dirty. So it's not going to be like bright white and like super clean green. It's going to be more muted and dirty, which ties in with the rabble of troops that I've painted. And there we are. We have a whole swathe of men-at-arms, foot troops. These are obviously designed to be used for my 5 Leagues and Oathmark games for fantasy setting stuff, but swapping out those shields, I can use them for Baron's War. So I've got a whole selection of random shields here. Some of these are probably like Lord shields, but it's just to give you an idea. It's for illustrative purposes only. But yeah, just swapping out the shields. Not, I mean, obviously I blue tack these on. You can glue them on. A little bit of super glue, you can easily break it off. But yeah, just that same colour scheme, different coloured shields, doesn't really change anything. Your focus is on the heraldry of the shield, and it works really, really well. So super pleased with these. Can't wait to get more done. Now, what I do find really interesting is I get really attached to some of the paint schemes that I've done that are really simple and straightforward. And I really like these. And I like the fact that I can change them and swap them out and stuff like that for different game systems. But I've done it before where I've done like a few like other like painting units or whatever, or like armies, and they've just been really simple, straightforward, and I've just become really attached to them. And I think that's something to bear in mind. Yes, these are never going to win a painting competition. They're not designed for that. I'm not going to put these into like Golden Demon or like Salute or whatever as like an entry to win, because they're rough. That last dry brush to tie some of the colors together is obviously a really quick army painting technique to get a highlight that covers everything. That's not going to win you an award, but it's going to get you stuff on the tabletop, and that's the key really. So I can use these for like Oathmark, like I said, random baddies for 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, but there's also things like Nevermind the Billhooks, there's Lion Rampant, Baron's War, Warhost. There's so many stuff I can use this for now, and just by swapping out those shields or doing more, because I've got so many shields, and I can put some round ones on. I know officially like they probably have more the heater shield, but if it's a fantasy set, you can do what you want. At the end of the day, it's your hobby. But the one thing I always want to try and convey with army painting is just trying to keep it minimal, don't go too complicated, and just pick out one thing that really helps something to stand out. So like take my Traitor Guard here, for instance. I painted them quite quickly. A lot of it was just dry brushes over grey. I used a few like contrast and speed paints to pick out the cloth, put a little bit of effort in the face, and then a little bit of markings on like some of the helmets and shoulder pads and stuff like that. That's where my effort went. That draws people's eyes in. And like take the US infantry here. I mean, again, a lot of drab colours, green undercoat, a few dry brushes, lots of speed paints. And the thing, I mean, there's a bit of effort put into the face, not a lot, but the thing that I wanted to do with these was tie them into the setting, make them feel cold, make it feel a wintry kind of vibe, because obviously got the great coats on, and I just sponged some off-white on around the base of the boots and like the jacket and around some of the shoulders and stuff like that. And that helped feel, or get them in that setting, give them a feeling of it being cold. I was trying to channel the Foy setting from Band of Brothers. But yeah, so there's always going to be something you can pull out of models that you can like do a little thing on or put a little bit of effort into. So it could be a visual thing like a marking, it could be the shield, which is the bright color, or it could be like adding a little bit of realism or adding into the setting. Verisimilitude, I think it is. I think that's the word. Yeah, big words for Peach, that is. But yes, as always, massive thank you to watching. Big love to the patrons for all your support. You are the greatest. You will always be the greatest. I am not worthy of your support, but I do appreciate it nonetheless. And just generally, thank you to anyone for watching. If you have any great techniques as well, do throw them in. Put them into the comments. Any kind of hacks for anyone like watching or reading the comments is always good, because we do accrue lots of plastic and want to get things painted. Some of you might want to spend hours and hours on a model. That is totally cool. But if you want to get things painted in a couple of hours, then that's kind of the point of this video, really. And most of the videos I kind of do and cover. But yes, right. I mean, it's getting close to Christmas time. I can't wait to get these foot troops used. I mean, I've been wanting to play Baron's War for a while anyway. I mean, I've done a load of like knights, which were kind of done weirdly for 5 Leagues as well as Baron's War, so I was kind of trying to tie like 2 things together. I did have this notion of trying to do stuff for Cry Havoc, so I still need to get on that and do some more like foot knights to tie in with the Cry Havoc stuff, and maybe follow and copy all the kind of characters, I guess, in Cry Havoc, because there's like some characters. So you have a few guys with bills, a few guys with spears, a few normal men at arms, some guys in crossbows, but they all had names. I still remember Giles, one called Giles, who's got like, I think he's a peasant. He's just giving 2 fingers to people, a bit like how I did Archer the Archer. He's giving 2 fingers to people, so I could build someone like him again and make him look like Giles. But yeah, there's a fair few characters in Cry Havoc I want to do, and again, I could follow this technique. I now have even more troopers to use in, like I said, 5 Leagues. So swapping out those shields, I can make them Black Veil, I can make them Whitewood Mercenary Company, like they've hired a load of guys, or they might be the foot troops on the garrison. I don't know. But anyway, waffled on enough. I'm going to go. Love you all. Bye.